I was a cop once, a dang good one. I joined the force when I was 21 and rose fast through the ranks until I was heading a new task force dedicated to fighting organized crime. We were clinical about who we targeted. We went in hard on raids and we were a success. One spring morning, though, my world collapsed. I was in my office signing off paperwork when two men I did not recognize walked in. They wore suits and not uniforms. They showed me their IDs, the badge no cop wanted to see, internal affairs, and then they arrested me. I was charged under Statute 18, USC Section 201, with receiving a gratuity. $250,000 had been deposited in my bank account, and there was no way that was anything other than dirty money, in their opinion. They bought you. One of them said his partner took out a set of handcuffs. There's no need for those, I told him. I was aware of a lot of eyes on me, officers that I trusted and respected, a few that I believed felt that way towards me. I was desperate not to be walked out of the station in handcuffs. I was a proud man back then. They cuffed me anyway. This is a setup, you know that, I told them. They said nothing, just led me out into a waiting car. 6 months later, I was found guilty and given a custodial sentence and discharged from the force. As I was taken from court, I thought my life had reached rock bottom. It turned out my nightmare was only just beginning. As a former police officer, I should have been kept apart from the general population, but that didn't happen. I chose not to share the details of what was done to me, save that it was beat up pretty bad. After years of enduring this, the man who was released from prison was unrecognizable to the young, brave idealist who had signed up to make the city he lived in a better place. I was broken and angry and soon living on the streets. Winter was beginning to bite. Although I was sleeping in doorways on scavenged cardboard boxes, I slept better than I had inside. I was not a target anymore, an object of loathing. In the morning, I would find a public restroom and then go through trash cans out of the backs of fast food joints to find scraps to eat. This was when the agency had first contacted me. I did not know that then. All I knew was that there was a man watching me. I was picking dirt off of a half-eaten cheeseburger, and my main fear was that he would try to take it off me. He started to approach me. I bared my teeth, decided that he would have to fight me. As he came closer, I could see that he was wearing a plain-looking business suit under a gray raincoat. He was bald and his cheeks were pitted with acne scars. He had clearly noted my threatening expression and held out his hands in a "I don't want any trouble" kind of way. "Oh, easy there," he said. "I'm a friend." I had stuffed the remains of the burger into my mouth when he spoke, so my reply was pretty muffled. "I don't have any friends." He looked pretty sanguine about this, nodded, and said, "Well, fair enough. What if I was to say that I'm someone who can help you?" "I don't want your help," I snarled. "Not even if I showed you a picture of the man I will pay you to kill." He smiled when he said this and took a photograph from his pocket, held it out so I could see it in the fading light. Something inside of me started to burn. I recognized this man. He was the crime boss who would frame me by paying money into my bank account. I had uncovered this privately in the time between my arrest and the trial, but no one wanted to listen to me. I knew, though. I knew what he had done to me. He deserves to die slowly and painfully, as bad as it can get. But why should I clean him off the face of the earth? I asked. The man in the plain business suit shrugged. Revenge, he replied in a calm voice, as if he was discussing a car loan with me. And because I'll pay you $5,000. I stared at him, wiped stale cheese off of my lips. I didn't ask who he was. I didn't ask how he knew I would want to take revenge of this man. I didn't ask any more questions. The fire which had begun in me was already out of control. "I'm in," I said. And that was it. The man in the plain business suit asked me to follow him. We moved through back streets from which I caught glimpses of busy roads, men and women going home after another day at work, taxis dropping off people going to see a show, ordinary life rushing by, oblivious to the two men halting outside a door. There was no number, no sign. The building that we stood in front of looked derelict to me. The man in the plain business suit took out a key and ushered me inside. It was dark. Broken furniture littered the floor. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a rat scurrying away. The man knelt over, lifted a floorboard. There was a gun hidden there, ammunition too. "I hope you haven't forgotten how to use one of these," he said as he gave me the weapon. It was a cold, hard weight in my hand. "Oh, I remember," I told him. He nodded. "Good." And then he told me where the man I was going to kill would be in an hour's time. I didn't want to wait that long. The pressure of all the years I had lost in prison felt unbearable. I wanted to go find the man there and then, press the barrel against his skin and pull the trigger. The man in the plain business suit continued. "After you're done, go to the Central train station, East Street entrance. There's a locker number 326 with a bank card for an account that will be activated when the kill is confirmed." He walked towards the door. "See you later," he said, and with that, the man in the plain business suit was gone. I took a deep breath and stepped out into the night. The address that I had been given was a dive bar in a shady part of town. The dealers and the ladies on the street corners ignored me. I clearly couldn't afford any of their services. I walked into the bar. The man that I was going for was in a corner table. His date, a blonde, was made up to the nines and at least 40 years younger than him. Once upon a time, I had vowed to put this man behind bars, legally, following due process and by the letter of the law. I raised the gun, aimed, and fired. A headshot, and then a second to make sure. There was a moment of perfect stillness then. The man looked wide-eyed with surprise, but the only thing that he would be seeing from now on was hellfire. His date began to scream. Well, so much for peace and quiet. I walked back out of the bar, threw the gun in the gutter. I wasn't worried about anyone chasing after me. I wasn't worried about being caught. I felt numb. I don't remember making my way to the train station, but once I was there, it was easy street. The locker opened without a key and I found a bank card as promised, and a slip of paper with a PIN number. I didn't recognize the name on the card but figured that would not be a problem. And there were clothes as well, clean jeans and boots, a t-shirt and a leather jacket. I went to the restroom, strip washed and got changed. "You did good." I spun around at the sound of the voice, reached for the gun that had been in my pocket, but I had ditched the gun, didn't even have the same pocket. Those trousers were screwed up and dumped in the restroom bin. I looked at the man in the plain business suit. I did what I said I would. I told him and I headed for the exit. I still didn't know who he was or how he knew so much about me, but I was wondering by now. I felt exposed on the back foot, and I did not like it one bit. I was going to get out of there, leave this dangerous stranger behind. "There's more," he said. "More if you want it. The feed doubles with every kill. And there are bonuses. I can give you a new identity, a passport. It can match your new bank account, or you can have a different name. Your choice. And looking back, it was. I had $5,000, enough for a bus ticket to the other side of the country, enough to live off while I got an off-the-books job. But there was something about his offer. One more job, I thought. That gives me $15K. I take the new ID, and then I disappear under my terms with a whole new world of options. I turned to look at him. One more job, I said. 10 grand in my account. He smiled. Deal. This time, the picture that he showed me was of a stranger. He told me that this man ran a drugs factory. The products were low grade, often fatal. He was scum, someone who didn't have the right to breathe. A few hours later, I shot the drug maker from close range while he slept, and then I went to check my bank account. The money was there. As I stood at the ATM, I did the math. 15 still wasn't enough, not for a clean break. I went for a drink, a classy place. I flirted with a waitress and got a little drunk. After an hour or so, the man in the plain business suit walked in. He took a seat, ordered a whiskey sour mocktail. Are we going to make it 3 out of 3? He asked me. Sure, I answered, but I have some questions first. Fire away. He chuckled at his own joke. I took another drink and said, So you seem to know a lot about me, about my past and how to find me, but I know nothing about you. You could start there maybe. Are you a one-man band, an entrepreneur? No, I'm an employee with a large organization. It is referred to by those who need to know as the agency. And before you ask, we predate and have nothing to do with a certain bunch of Central Intelligence amateurs. The agency is publicly funded but via accounts that never see the light of day. And your organization's purpose is... His drink arrived. He raised his glass and a toast and said, Our organization. You're on the payroll now, remember? I did not clink glasses, just sat and stared. Unperturbed, he took a sip and continued. We uphold order, but to do so, we need to operate away from the law. I cut in. By executing. Not really, he replied. Those two were an induction. The proper work begins tonight. So what do you want me to do? I asked. I want you to kill a dead man. We had finished our drinks. I picked up the bill and we returned to his office. There were no rats this time, but the decor was still trashed. It was dark outside and darker in there. My breath, frosted in the cold air, was the only sign of life. He took a file out of a safe set into the wall and camouflaged by obscene spray-painted graffiti. He handed it over, and as I flicked through it, taking in the color headshot of a man in his 50s on page 1, he began to explain. The dead man was a scientist. He was working on an experimental program to improve longevity. To make people live longer, I asked. He raised an eyebrow. Not exactly. The program was ethically in the gutter and was meant to remain hidden. However, the object of your next assignment got greedy. He decided to sell this word to a foreign bidder and took a number of samples with him from the laboratory. He faked his own death. Before he did this in the hope that we wouldn't notice his actions, an act that was completely in vain, though his staged funeral was rather touching, and the finger buffet at his wake was excellent. So you know where he is, I said. He nodded and gave me an address and a new gun, new bullets too. Before I set off, I had another question on my mind. What if the press finds out about this program? The public? The press, the public, he said scornfully. They never will because everyone outside of senior management who knows about it will be eliminated, he said calmly. Apart from us, of course, he added with a smile that chilled me down to the marrow. I had nothing else to say, but he was not done. There is the possibility the scientist will not be alone, he said. If that's the case, contact me immediately for further instructions on this. He threw over a mobile phone. It had to have been cutting edge about 30 years ago. I looked at it disdainfully and then asked him, "You want me to use this brick to call you?" "It is old technology," he replied, "using a network that everyone else thinks was shut down decades ago, and as such goes unnoticed. So yes, call me on it." With his instructions over, he walked out of the door. Scowling, I followed, out into a night that felt even darker and colder than it had before. My intel was that the scientist was holed up in an old hospital. A display on the chained-up entrance showed an artist's impression of the sophisticated apartment's plan for the site. As I clambered over the fence, I really couldn't see it. Shattered glass lay everywhere, and cracks rose through the walls. I crept inside as quietly as the shards would allow. A strip light in the ceiling still flickered, and I could hear the steady drip of water somewhere in the distance. And voices. I crouched down. There were figures in a room to my left, so the scientist was not alone. I took out the phone. As instructed, I would call this information in. Struggling with the clunky buttons, I made it through the menu, then the address book, and then the agency contact. I pressed call, then it went straight to voicemail, on speakerphone. "Who's there?" A voice called from inside of the room, no doubt alerted by the recorded message blaring from the mobile. I swore, took out my gun, and shot the man who walked out into the corridor in the chest. He crumpled to a heap. Breathing rapidly, I went over to ID him. Thankfully, it was the man in the file. Job done. Kind of. Because there were more people emerging from the room. There were 6 of them, and they moved slowly, uncertainly, as if they weren't sure how to walk. Their clothes were filthy, but their faces had a strange, shiny quality to them. Their arms were reaching out. They were stumbling on, getting ever closer. The hum of the answer phone recording ended, and the voice of the man in the plain business suit came through. "Sit rep. I'm face to face with a bunch of freaks." I shouted back an answer. "Oh, please don't be so crude." The man in the plain business suit said on the phone. "They're second-generation zombies." "Second-generation what?" I exclaimed. "The risen dead. The shadow government has a number of zombie-centered initiatives. The individuals that you are encountering were liberated from the laboratory by the man that you were sent to kill. They were part of a program that aimed to create longer-lasting and fresher zombies. They were being treated with preservatives and have been coated in an airtight layer of synthetic skin. It's very exciting." "Are you out of your freaking mind?" I told him. The things, these zombies, plus, were now only feet away. Sweat ran down my face and my guts churned. I had known fear in my life, but never like this. This was wrong. It was inhuman, evil. "Get back," I yelled and raised my gun. I had to get on top of this situation and fast. Their eyes were empty of everything but hate. I fired. The shot caught the nearest creature in its neck. It did not flinch, but a hole appeared in its skin, and moments later the stench hit me. The foul, nauseating odor of decay. It must have been building up under the layer of synthetic skin. I fired again, but I was shaking too badly to get a kill shot, and this time it hit a cheek. A new rent appeared in the thing's skin, and more rancid, smelling gas was released. And still it came. It and its dead walking kin. I staggered backwards, tried desperately to steady my aim, and then fired 6 shots. 6 foreheads shattered and the things fell to their knees. I stood over them to make sure. The air was thick with the smell of their flesh, which I can now see had continued to decay under their shells of synthetic skin, despite whatever preservatives they had been fed in the lab. Their bodies were a putrid, rotting mess. I bent doubled and vomited. On the other end of the mobile, the man in the plain suit was shouting, "Have you eliminated all the evidence? Do you require me to dispatch assistants to deep clean the site?" I dropped the phone and ground it into fragments under my boot. What I required was to get out of there, to get away from the man in the plain business suit and his whole freaking agency. But how, I thought, as I kept to the back streets, as I scanned the walls for CCTV and the skies for surveillance drones. There must be satellites as well, I figured, unseen by the naked eye. The agency had eyes everywhere, that much had become clear, and by trying to break free of them, I was in their sights. 48 hours have passed since then. I am sharing this information now in the hope that putting it in the public domain will shift the odds in my favor. Call it a preemptive strike, or at last a throw of the dice. I have no idea what will happen. All I know for sure is that I am desperate to end time alone, and that all I can do is keep moving and somehow try and survive.